Welcome to Built from Scratch. On this show, I interview entrepreneurs under 30 to hear about the stories of their initial success. My goal is to encourage the next generation of leaders to take action and make a difference. I'm Eric Libby, and on today's episode, we have entrepreneur Adam Green with Stunio. From East Lansing, Michigan, Adam grew up playing the piano, excelling in hockey, engaging in the political climate, and even nurturing an entrepreneurship passion from a young age. In 2017, Adam began his journey at Michigan State University, earning a bachelor's degree in political science before completing a law degree in 2023. Midway through his college career, Adam launched his own company aimed at connecting college students with local residents in need of an extra hand. Since then, Adam has achieved remarkable milestones. He's competed in pitch competitions, been featured on Fox News, 2,500 jobs completed as a company, and even delivered a TEDx presentation. Adam is just 25 years old. Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Eric. This is great. Super excited to be here.
This will be super fun. So for the listeners here, Adam and I had the opportunity to connect maybe a year and a half ago or so.
Yep.
They're very similar business models, and I think it's just some of the things that we're able to relate to has been so cool so far in this journey, just being able to get to know each other, develop our friendship, learn from one another as well. But Adam, where I'm going to start, because I think this is always great to highlight for the entrepreneur, is what did life look like when you were younger? Did you have this entrepreneurial spirit from a young age? Kind of highlight that for our listeners today.
Yeah, I love that question because my parents are entrepreneurs. They started a small business, now probably about 20 years ago. They sell wholesale flower bulbs. So if you go to Walmart or Aldi or Kroger, those types of places, and you find like a plastic package of various flower bulbs, daffodils, tulips, amaryllis, whatever it is, hostas, or like small shrubs and trees. That's what they do. They import those plants from the Netherlands and Israel and Asia, and they package them up in Kalamazoo and they send them off across the country. So they've been doing that for about 20 years, but it started off as a thing they were just doing out of their garage. They were selling packets of or like little baggies of strawberry seeds for a nickel. And so now it's turned into this large nationwide company. And that's how they've operated and how they've raised up my sister and I throughout the years, and I thought that was always super special being, having them home because they work from home. That was their main office. They drove me to hockey. They were always there for the various events and things, and so I knew that there was an aspect of that life that I wanted to have eventually. Having the flexibility, having ownership of something, having pride in something that you've created. But I didn't necessarily know I wanted to be an entrepreneur until it really became a necessity that I had to start my company, which we'll probably get into. But like you said, it was in law school when I started my business. And so it wasn't until much later that I kind of cracked that entrepreneurial spirit that was always there from my parents.
Crazy. So do you remember, I suppose, because this would have been when they started when you're 5 years old. So 20 years ago, you'd have been 5 years old.
Yep.
What are some of those early memories that you remember? Because as a business, there's so many things going on. You have we got to go market the product. We got to go connect with people. We need to actually build the product. Like, what are those early memories that you actually do remember?
It's tough because, being so young, but I remember like traveling with my dad to Bentonville, Arkansas, where Walmart's headquarters was, and he had landed a contract with them, and I had they did a big program with Susan G. Komen with the Breast Cancer Awareness Society, and they donated a bunch of money, and so I was like the little cameraman at this. It was like a 5K or something to raise awareness for breast cancer, cool. And he was presenting a check to Walmart, and some really cool stuff like that. He based the business at the start around giving back to the community, giving back to initiatives and causes that really meant a lot to him and my mom. Breast cancer being one of them. So I remember the business was based a lot on that. It's really funny. I've seen like memes before about like I'm downstairs doing Just Dance on the Wii, whereas my parents are upstairs, struggling through the 2008 financial crisis. It's like we as kids didn't really, probably couldn't comprehend the things that they were going through in those moments to make the business is what it is today. Though I do remember my mom at a certain point had to go back to work. So she started working at Walmart just as, in the grocery area, just to get more money to sort of help the business keep going and to pay for stuff because, it was slim pickings when you're starting a business. And for my parents raising two kids, I couldn't imagine the pressure. So
Do you so like when you're growing up, like you said, I think you highlighted it perfect. You don't fully comprehend what is actually happening when you're younger. So
yeah.
that's a great, and I haven't seen that meme or analogy, but that's a great analogy because you don't really like you get it, like oh, okay, they've got their own business, but you don't understand the actual depth of it. But I'm just curious, did you when your parents are running their own business and now you maybe look at other kids and their families and they're maybe have corporate jobs or whatever that may be. Did you understand that at least? Like, okay, like my parents are just they're figuring it out on their own and then other parents are just doing something completely different.
Yeah, I definitely knew there was a difference because in the way like some of my friends would I guess when they went home, sometimes the bus would drop them off to an empty house, and their parents wouldn't come home for 3 or 4 hours later. Whereas I was always like, well, my parents are here. Like they're literally at home and or they just picked me up from school and we're going to hockey now and now we're going to tennis and now we're going to a show. Like there was a distinct difference that I don't think I necessarily attributed it to entrepreneurship or having a business at the time. I just knew there was something different about the fact that my parents were home more than I think my friends were saying their parents were, which was cool for me because I'm like, sweet, I love my parents. I want, it's nice. But yeah, it was different.
A little bit different. So when you mentioned obviously you're coming to school, which we're going to cover that once we get into your actual business that you're working on right now. But was there any like maybe it wasn't like trying to start like let's go and like start a company, but any initial thoughts of like, all right, I'm going to go buy and sell chocolate bars or little entrepreneurial things that you remember that you did personally, or was there not much of that?
No, yeah, surprisingly not. I guess you could say entrepreneurial in the sense that I was involved in various like leadership positions and throughout high school and middle school and those types of things and getting into college. I started my own student group at Michigan State and during my undergrad years. So I think there was a bit of that, like I like to take ownership of things, but as far as a company goes or turning it into like something where you could profit from the making of said entity, I didn't do.
Not so
It was
much.
all just like service-based stuff and just kind of creating stuff. I would say though, I think looking way back, connecting it to my parents used to do these garden tours around their homes. We have like 10 acres at their house, and they have these beautiful gardens. They're horticulturists by trade, and so people would come from the Michigan State University Master Gardener Society or group and come and tour the gardens. And I remember my sister and I we were in the like literal vegetable garden handing out or trying to like give out or sell little green beans. And so I remember that was when I was only like probably like 3 or 4. So if you could call that entrepreneurship, then that's where I
So
started.
well, I have to say because you think like you're out there almost being the rainmaker. Like you have to go and connect with people, have those conversations, which is a really important skill in
Yeah,
entrepreneurship. Like you have to be able to be comfortable going up to anybody and them saying like probably in your maybe as a four. I can't imagine this happened as a 4 year old, but they're probably like, yeah, I don't really want that. Like no, no, no,
right.
thanks. I'm good. So you get that immediate failure or the no at an early age.
Right. Yeah. I probably had a higher success rate of sales than I do now today with talking to
Love
people since I was so
it.
young. But yeah, no, good lessons to learn nonetheless.
For sure. So, kind of, and we'll come into what that life looked like during school. But one thing I want to highlight is some of those experiences that you had that led up to starting uni services and then today Stunio. You had a couple it seemed like political side internships, experiences. You
Yep.
were working with the House of Representatives, which I saw in Michigan, which I thought was really cool, and then going on to be the chief operating officer of another company. I can't remember the name, but it was I think it
Yep.
was Dome IQ, I believe.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
and so kind of tell me like what was that experience like? I mean, did that plant some of the initial seeds of entrepreneurship? I think just maybe give us a highlight of what you learned there.
Yeah, actually, my time in politics in the legislature when I was in undergrad, I think really actually spurred the opportunity to then go into entrepreneurship. Funny enough, just through that connection. So, like I said, I had always wanted to go into politics. I'd always loved history. Thought that I was just going to be some sort of constitutional or corporate lawyer, and so of course I went on the path of going to at Michigan State, the James Madison College, which is a residential college within the greater university, that I was able to study pre-law, political theory, constitutional democracy, all those, political nerd type of things. And I loved it, and I still do. And it was the second benefit to that, going to Michigan State with that program, was we were about 5, 6 miles down the road from our state capital in Lansing. And so I figured that would be a great opportunity for me to get an internship. Interviewed with a few different offices. It wasn't common for freshmen at college to go get an internship at Michigan State or with the
Legislature.
capital.
Yeah.
But it was something I was super passionate about. I wanted to take part in that, and luckily was able to land a position with the Speaker Pro Tempore's office, which is essentially like the assistant speaker of the House of the Michigan House Representatives. And I was an intern, unpaid intern, worked through the whole summer or the whole winter of my freshman year. I remember riding my bike through the snow from class at 8 a.m. in a full suit. I would go to class, ride in the snow, then ride about a mile and a half to get to my car to then drive to the Capitol. And I just remember some of those days were brutal because, I'm riding my bike in the snow trying to get to that internship, but it meant a lot that, it was an opportunity that I had. Eventually, once the Speaker Pro Tem got reelected, he was elected to be the Speaker of the House. And so I got it was a part-time position. I worked, I think, Monday, Wednesday, Friday as a paid staffer of the office. And from there up until COVID, I worked for him. And then as COVID was sort of transpiring, people were sent home. I was working from home remotely. Eventually thought that I wasn't going to go back into the office. I was staying with my parents at the time. And it was interesting because another former Speaker of the House from like the early 2000s found me through the office, through the current Speaker of the House's office that I was working for. And he was wanting to start a digital software startup. Sure. And for whatever reason, using his political connections, probably went to the office and said, "Who do you know that's good?" And for whatever reason, they gave him my name, which, I didn't have any experience in building technology or, anything of the sorts that he was wanting to do. But nonetheless, he still wanted me to help him with the company. And so that's where I became the acting and then interim COO of the company, just essentially his right-hand man to help build wireframes for apps and do presentations to people we were selling to, and do investment presentations and do financials. And I really did a lot of stuff that I had never done before regarding the whole entrepreneurial process through the startup phase into investment into building a product. And that taught me a lot about the various steps and pieces of the process that it took to make a successful product. And so I did that for about a little over 2.5 years.
How old were you too, Adam, at that point? How old were you when you started that?
I think it was probably like 21 or 22.
Gotcha.
Yep. And then from there, I eventually, kind of more to the story later with Uniservices and Stunio, but that gave me the interest in starting my own business, because I, again, kind of going back to wanting the ownership and kind of wanting to do it my way and having some ideas and doing those sorts of things gave me a good onus to go start something of my own.
Absolutely. So a lot of things I'd love to extrapolate out of that. So first was, what I got is like the value of networking. So one person to another. I'm curious, like, for maybe the listeners that are trying to get into a new opportunity, maybe it's not just necessarily a business right away, but just want to get into put themselves in front of an internship, something that's going to develop their career. How did you take those first steps to actually get in with that speaker? So then you started to move along, because that's really, you just need to plant the seed, show your value, but you need to get in there first. So how did you take that first step to actually get in?
Yeah, I'd say it's two things. It even goes back to high school when I was getting involved with, various groups, and I got an internship during high school. I used a connection through the football team, which I was on the football team my freshman year. There was a girl whose dad was a lawyer in our town, and just struck up a connection with him. Actually, you know what it was? I think I was class president of our grade. And so I was naturally,
nice.
I was picked as one of the coaches for the Powder Puff team, which is the girls' football team, to play during homecoming. I don't know how I just remember this. And the girl what was it? The girl was one of the players on the team, and so I started to meet her dad, who I think helped us coach a little bit. Anyways, he was an attorney, struck up a relationship, put myself out there in situations that it was natural to have new connections pop up because I'm literally just getting involved in community events. It led to an internship with him. And then actually, now that I remember, that was good experience that I used when I went to go interview at the state capitol to say, look, I know I'm a freshman in college, but I've already done stuff in high school. I've already worked in a law office for about a year and a half. So yeah, starting early and starting often, trying to make those connections because you really just don't know what it could lead to. So like you said, the power of connections is uh, many times people don't understand that, your goal for 5 years down the road, like you're not going to meet that person potentially who's going to put you in, that spot right now. You're going to meet somebody else that's going to connect you to two or three more people that will eventually get you there. And also just to, I guess, on that, it's also taking whatever position you're in and doing it to the best of your ability. Not kind of complaining or whining that oh, I'm only an intern, I'm unpaid, or whatever it is, or I'm just an intern in general. Like one of my bosses at the state capitol, uh, my direct report, he said, he started in the mailroom. And that was not where he wanted to be. He wanted to be working constituent services, helping pass legislation, but he got a job in the mailroom, and he did his job to the best of his ability, and eventually he was picked out of the mailroom into a great office. And so he said, don't ever think there's work that's below you.
Yeah.
Even the speaker should be, sweeping the floor sometimes if it's his own office. Like just making sure that, you know, especially for us young folks, I think there's an idea out there from maybe the older generations that we don't like to work or we won't work. Go work, do anything that you have to put yourself out there and make good experiences because good things will happen with those connections.
It's great. Like I'm so on board with that. When even in an entry level position or just you can tell like there's a standard when you go into a certain position, there's a standard that people expect. But if you're doing 2x what that other person's doing, it doesn't matter where you're at.
Yep.
Someone above you is going to take notice. Like wow, like whoa, like you're doing more than expected. But you keep bringing that level. It's just like it's bound. You're just going to spiral upwards, and it's like that's why it's so huge when you have the opportunity. It's like it's not going to be all handed to you right away. There's going to be a lot of toil, a lot of effort you're going to have to put in, probably a lot of uncomfortable things you're going to have to do before you get there. But if you can do that and you can just look at that hardest worker in the room and then be like, I'm just going to 2x whatever they're putting in, like, I mean, that's great. So it's a testament to that. That's huge.
Absolutely.
Adam, there's one other thing I was going to touch on with the experience. So getting into that technology side with the business, what was the biggest, like, was there a business takeaway that you had? And what was how did you transfer that into the initial skill that you would later use in your own company?
Great question. Yes, there's quite a few, but the biggest one that sticks out to me is not waiting for perfection of a product before you launch. So this was an issue that it actually kind of sparked the interest I had in doing it on my own because I felt like we were developing a product with Dome IQ for so long, and it just kind of like the goalpost kept moving for me as far as like when we were going to launch and when I was told we were going to launch and we're doing customer validation and we're going to launch here and then we got to wait another 2 months when we had people literally yelling at us saying launch, just get it in people's hands. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something that they can start playing with. It's gonna break. It's not gonna be perfect. And heck, it's not gonna be pretty. It's gonna break. And you want it to break because the quicker it breaks, the faster you can learn how to fix it. And the faster you can learn how to make it better so that it doesn't break anymore. And so a lot of times as founders, I think I've heard this a lot with different founders in Michigan State. They're so reluctant to just put that first product into market, whether it's a very simple, hacky manual solution to whatever you're doing. And they just wait and they don't capture the right signals from the market, perhaps because they're kind of making assumptions through building a product for so long that they're not actually doing it in market. And so maybe they're making something that the market's not even going to receive. And so when I started my business, it was super important to me that I didn't wait to go raise a bunch of money, try to build a whole technology suite, before we go launch. I was doing it by Facebook, posts, and I had a small website. I had people literally send us one time. A person sent me a letter in the mail saying we had a job for us. Like we had a phone number. Like it wasn't a fancy app. It wasn't a software at all. It was, a small student group. I was doing the jobs. I didn't wait to hire anybody else. Like it's just that was a big takeaway from that business, not to wait for perfection. Just do it, and you're going to learn a lot more, much that's going to be much more valuable when you go to actually build something for the long term.
I just had a thought, and tell me what you think of this. It just came into my mind here.
Yeah.
So if you launch early and now you know it's not perfect, so now there's issues with it, and now people are going to probably get pissed, like what's wrong with this? Like in a sense, maybe, and you tell me what you think, but maybe
Uh-huh.
it actually pushes you to move at a faster pace rather than like I'm waiting, I'm sitting back, I'm going to launch it when it's ready. Where you're making progress, but you're not pushed. Where you have this like there's no like social pressure to like push you to like get it better. Where
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you feel that? Did
I
that?
do. And oh, absolutely. And I would say actually it seems counterintuitive, but if you have people pissed and mad that it's
You're
not
gonna
working
move
a certain
quick. You're
way,
gonna move quick.
you're going to move quick, but it's also positive because it shows that they care and that like it's something that they want to work. And so I actually think that's a great sign. If you're making people mad at the start, it's kind of interesting because they want it to work. They care enough. Like people's time is valuable, and if they care enough to be mad or want to request feature sets, and they're like, "Oh, this didn't work the way it should have," that's kind of a good thing because you're able to identify those gaps much more quickly, like we said. And yeah, it just pushes you to move a lot faster.
Faster clip. No, that's yeah, very interesting. So as we kind of progress, you're working in this. I know this was partially while you were at school, but I'd love to touch because I think this is an important part of many of the entrepreneurs that I've had these interviews with, the school life. And so, kind of as a background for our listeners, Adam had it sounded like multiple generations that all went to Michigan State. You decided to go
Yep.
there in
My last name is
2017.
Green after all, right?
There you go. There you go. Right on. And so I'm just curious, like I'm hearing some of these experiences. I know, I mean, working on the business now, like in the middle of your college career, getting involved with like some of those political organizations. I mean, getting married in 2022, like all these different things coming together. I'm just curious, how did you balance all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, it's a conversation I have with a lot of people because it commonly comes up as a question of how the heck did you manage like an internship during school, and then I also started a club, and like you said, the TEDx talk and all these things, then eventually the business. Like I was doing Dome IQ during my first and second year of law school, and then during my second year I started to actually do Dome IQ and Unis services at the same time, plus law school, plus got engaged and was getting married. There's a lot going on. I would say it's hard to necessarily say, specifically how I was able to do it, but I think generally speaking, what I try to encourage people to think about is they have much more bandwidth than they're really kind of thinking they do. And I think a lot of time we are we're burdened by our phones too, like with how much time we may spend on social media or YouTube or whatever it is. There's a lot of time in the day that you waste doing other things. Maybe it's not waste, but that you use for other purposes. That if you're able to better, time management is really key. And I think some people gloss over that idea of time management. It's just like, oh, that's too generic of a statement. Time management doesn't really mean much, but it really does to me. And that's something that, as a general principle, I was able to accomplish these things during school with so many other things going on because of just proper time management. And it could be, planning out your weeks, ahead of time, being really diligent with how long you're spending on something. I think with law school, particularly, I learned that, at the very beginning, I was writing down all the names of judges and the lawyers and like all these things in my notes and like really, really specific notes about these cases. And eventually, once we got to class, it was like, that's not what they even talked about. So, like, why am I wasting my time? But I even knew third year law students who still were writing down every name of every judge and every lawyer. It's like, that's not the main principle. That's not what you're learning about. That's not what you're supposed to get from the case. So, don't write it down, maybe, or don't spend time. So, like, a lot of students would, maybe spend, orders of magnitude more hours of working and studying than me on a certain thing. Whereas I felt pretty comfortable with, reducing my time there by using some other, taking notes from online, trying to, look at different summaries and, not not going overboard with some of the note taking, or reading kind of like 4 times in a row. Trying to just balance out the time and doing that pre-planning is what it's all about.
Is there any specific things that you do going into a week? Are you writing out your weekly routine like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning, 8 to 11, we're doing this? Like, do you get very specific with it when you're planning?
And I used to be really bad. Actually, this year I've started to actually pretty much use my calendar very specifically. But no, in the past, I generally knew where different things landed throughout the day. And, I think just as a general principle, I try to get up early in the morning, and I try to get some of those. There's a term our new COO uses, which is eat the frog. So you eat the frog in the morning. It's like get the biggest thing out of the way in the morning, like this big thing that you're going to dread for the rest of the day, get it done in the morning. And a lot of times I'd get those things done in the morning. And so the rest of the day could be flexible depending on what things came up with the business or with school. And then you can kind of, adapt. And so I don't think rigidness of such a schedule is always good too, because you do need to be flexible and just be willing to adapt. Like, not just sitting in class or not after class twiddling on my phone. I may have to pick up my computer and do a little work for the business. There was a lot of those trade-offs that I had to make to, balance it all.
That was a great memory that I had at when I was at Stetson. Is there were so many times where I have like a class from, we'll say, 10 to 11:15 and then 11:30 right after, in that 15-minute gap. Were you on the same page doing that stuff, like little 15 minutes
Oh
right
yeah.
there? We just, yeah.
Yep. I mean, it adds up. I mean, if you have 3 or 4 classes a day, you have 15 minutes in between each. There's an hour,
There you
that
go.
you're
Right.
potentially able to knock out in the middle of the day, and you could do a lot in that time.
A few extra things. Absolutely. So I'd love to know, and I asked this to each of the entrepreneurs, Adam, do you think that, and you went deeper than most with your college career. You went on to get a law degree as well. Do you think that school was essential for the path that you want to go down? And if so, to what degree?
Great question. I'd hate to say no, because I think that the value of a college education is still really valuable. Not even just for the piece of paper saying that I got a specific degree, but just showing that you have a right amount of diligence and fortitude and accountability to yourself, scheduling, just time management skills. A lot of the unsung attributes that make good entrepreneurs are ones that also make you a successful college student. Like, can you manage time? Are you very detail oriented? Are you able to balance multiple things at once? Can you stick to timelines? It's not always about just, I learned this or I remembered this, because I couldn't tell you, 10 books that I read at, college, some of the stuff that we read. So it's not necessarily about that, but the skills that you learn and the things that you're able to balance all at once, I think are good attributes that contribute positively to, what is required to be a successful entrepreneur. So yes and no. I think with me too, going to law school, it really did help in the sense that now I'm able to take that legal knowledge, albeit, not as in depth as, full-time lawyers, but just the knowledge and, skills that I learned during school can be applied to my business, or even just knowing when and how to ask the right questions to our attorneys who help our business, because I at least have some sort of context around what I should be asking or what I could be asking. So yeah, I think the value of a college education, more than just the piece of paper, or the books you read, or the papers you wrote, much more important is the skills that you're sort of crafting through that process, that building process, not necessarily just, what sort of, what did Mark Twain say? I mean, that's
Right on. Yeah, that was the most of the entrepreneurs said that the actual classes itself, in most cases, they went as far to say that it was a waste of time. Like, just like I was on my computer doing work while in class, but
Yeah,
it was the other stuff, the intangibles, like the networking, relationship building, the learning how to like manage a calendar while you have a bunch of other activities going on. So I think that was a
right.
huge one for sure. I think the last thing, and then I want to jump into actual where we're at with Stunio today. But what was the biggest change from your bachelor's to law degree? Was it just a lot more technical? Like, you were just doing a lot more technical work as you went into actually getting the law? degree?
Yeah, I think so. It's much more refined, specific engagement with specific areas of the law versus in undergrad it was much more generic and general principles. Yeah, kind of more nitty gritty, much more
Gotcha.
specific, and yeah, it was a hard transition at first, especially during COVID. I started law school during COVID, so we were all virtual for the first year of law school, which is tough, but yeah, a little more specific.
Gotcha. So now kind of jumping into like where Stunio is today, I suppose give if you can give the listeners just a context, like just an overall what your goal is, what problem you're solving.
Yeah, so very similar to your business, like you kind of touched on earlier, we're helping to connect. We're specifically focusing on college students to local businesses to get jobs done. I guess that's a super simple way to frame it. Giving students flexible opportunities during college to work with local businesses, well, whether it be a gig, so kind of like a shift, 4 to 8 hours in a day, maybe, as small as like 1 hour during the day, just to make some extra cash. Could be like a micro internship. So I'm showing up somewhere for, 1 to 2 days a week for 3 weeks, something extremely small. Digital based work, we're trying to give students, also access to helping with, creation of digital materials for other companies. We're really focused on connecting them with businesses nowadays, which is where we sort of deviated from your model, which is where we started with local residents, which is such a powerful market. And now we're focusing more on enterprise clients, businesses. Just found more success there in Michigan, and but yeah, just connecting those students to opportunities to make flexible cash, like every student needs.
Huge. And I love that you highlight it perfectly. And I've seen some of these little intro videos on you, Adam, or little stories where you say you started out the college life selling plasma from like day one, and then you were like, I have to figure something else out. So if you could highlight for the listeners, like what did those first few steps to actually getting the business out there? Like what did you tactically do? Because someone that's like, I got an idea, I don't know where to start. Like what's ground zero, ground one? What does that look like?
Yeah, back to what we're talking about with connections. Connections is everything. Connections is key. I had some mentors at the Capitol, going back to the Capitol as well, who lived in Lansing, who had a home, husband and wife, who had a home with many projects around the home that they needed done. When I started to transition out of selling my plasma into finding other opportunities to make money, they're one of the first people I called to ask if there's anything I can do around their house, because they had seen that I was starting to post on Facebook to local people in the community. Hey, I'm a college student. I'm in law school. My parents are horticulturists, kind of going all the way back to what my
Yeah,
parents do.
right.
I'm a horticulturist as well, kind of by trade. I could do some gardening. Who needs help? And they were also, they saw me post, they saw me post about that, and they were willing to take me on as like, they were my first client, and so they had me remove lava rock from one of their big flower beds, and so using something free, Facebook, local group chats, local community groups, just posting in there. I was doing everything like that from I guess step one was putting it out there that I had an interest in. I had a service I was providing. It could be a product that some of our listeners are having, that there was something to provide, that you're putting it into a market space that is free. Like that was really nice for me, because that's a super accessible way. When I didn't have any money myself at that point, that's why I was doing it. I couldn't pay for anything. Put it in a free channel, and then start going to do the work myself. So a lot of times, some people want to race to hire other people to go do the work, or to go make their product or do anything. Go make it yourself. Go do it
Yeah.
yourself. And so that's what I was doing a lot of myself. Was I was showing up 6 a.m. I remember one time before law school class, which is about at 8 o'clock, I chopped down a tree, at 6 a.m. in the morning. Like,
Oh, you
because,
must have been feeling so great, so accomplished. You chopped down a tree before 8 a.m.
oh my gosh, yeah, I mean, everybody else is rolling out of bed, they're getting to class. And I'm like, I just chopped down
Totally.
a tree. Like, I made $50. And so, yeah, that would be the first step. And, I created a website, again, free, on Wix, I think, and created a free website. We did create a little social media channel, and then eventually got my friends involved, and that's kind of how it started. And but first and foremost, it started with me moving my own feet, doing what I could in free ways to put it out there that I was offering a service and that people could hire me for it. And I didn't wait for anybody else to do it. I just said,
Just made it
I'm ready.
happen. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. So now you've completed in this time right around 2,500 projects. What's the biggest difference today than back at day one?
Yeah, great. So really funny. The first, oh man, I think the first job that we had, like with our student group, the Uniservices student group, I brought in a couple of my friends. Then we started using we were starting to advertise to like some other students to come in the group and to go out and do jobs. I think it was the first job that we had somebody else, not within me or my couple of friends, doing a job on their own. That was a big moment. I'm like, this would be where a business could be born, where we could hire other people to go do the work that we're setting up. I mean, that would be ideal.
Right.
Well, the guy didn't show up,
Yeah.
and this was when we delivered to him on a silver platter. It was like $120 for like literally like 2.5 hours of work of weeding or
Wow.
something. He didn't
Yeah.
show up. He slept in, and it was unfortunate because right then and there, I'm like, oh, that sucks. Like, there's no way I could punish this person. There's no way to even, require him to be there because, it's just a group. And anyways, flash forward to today, where some events that we have with businesses, we had a really cool event with the Lansing Convention Center, our big convention center in downtown Lansing, our capital city. They needed 50 students in one day for their MLK luncheon, which is their big thing with all the governor. The governor came, the senators were there, all the representatives. It's a huge thing. Well, in the past, staffing agencies had promised them that we're going to bring 100 people, and the next day, 19 people showed up. And so, like from these staffing agencies, so 19% show up rate. That was the year before we did this. Flash forward to today, where they needed 50 students from us, and I'm like remembering back to all the
Crazy.
iterations of
Yeah.
Uniservices, going back to even that first experience, way back when people just sometimes don't show up, and there's sometimes not a good reason. Well, all 50 students showed up. It was negative 15 wind chill, but they all showed up, and the event went off without a hitch. So definitely a big difference between that first day where, he didn't show up, to all right, 50 out of 50 showed up.
Wow. No, that's crazy. Yeah, definitely a big difference. So Adam, tell me what is the biggest challenge that you experience today on the business side? Like what are the things that you're struggling with right now working through as a business owner?
Yeah, it's always just I think marketing is the biggest thing. Now, luckily, we've been able to hire some really good staff around the team to help with sales and help with the partnerships, especially with a B2B business going after like enterprise clients. There's a lot more work that has to be put in to kind of lock in a contract. There's a lot of insurance, there's legal considerations, a lot more nitty gritty stuff. Whereas working with like say local residents as we used to, as you do, maybe they're a little more flexible, or they may not require for insurance purposes, such a very specific requirements. So yeah, nowadays it's the administrative burden of locking in partnerships with organizations. Though once you have it, it turns into a net benefit because you've both invested so much into that partnership that now you'll use it for a while. So, but definitely getting to that partnership with a business is what's taking the most time.
I've seen a few cool ones that you had. Like one was with one of the minor league baseball teams in the area. I thought that was pretty cool. So,
Yep.
I mean, how are you just approaching these? It's just getting, same thing with like the networking. It's just getting to know someone there, saying, "Hey, this is what we can do." Do you have any like strategy, like offering some free hours, like to try us out, or how do you get your foot in the door?
Yes. Yeah, great point. Yeah, free hours definitely, but definitely through connections first and foremost. I found that, me picking up the yellow pages, if anybody uses that anymore, I certainly don't, which is a general thought. Picking up a random phone number of a business and calling is really not that effective as far as what we've seen. It takes a warm introduction from maybe somebody who's already used the product. And so naturally, how the business has progressed from a B2C play with local residents into businesses is some of those local residents that we were servicing had businesses. And once then we were able to help those businesses succeed and get different jobs done, they referred us to other ones and larger ones. And so, yeah, even like the minor league baseball stadium came from a direct referral from the convention center, which came from a direct referral from Michigan State, which is where we were building it. So, yeah, connections are everything. And that's where it really, starts to brood some really nice,
Bigger
team
opportunities.
connectedness.
Yeah, huge. And that's one thing whenever I go to some of these high schools to speak or just trying to help younger students, maybe up and coming entrepreneurs is like there's such a value, even if it's on a small scale when you're first starting, like just building, like focusing on the people, like understanding the people around you might help you at some point. Maybe you can help them now, but maybe they can help you 5 years down the road. You have no idea. But like when you're in school, building connections with your peers, building connections with your professors, like all those people. And it's like, again, 5 years, 10 years, like if you're doing the right things, you're doing it the right way, then it comes back and it's like, that might be helpful way later on. So I think that's always something that's really important to highlight.
Absolutely.
So curious, and this is something that I think all entrepreneurs go through at some point because really what we sign up for, Adam, is we are going on a roller coaster adventure. It is something new every day. We're experiencing the highest of highs, the lowest of lows. You close a deal, and the next day you're gonna miss payroll, all this stuff like that. And it's just it's a consistent flow. And I'd be curious, what is your when you're crushing it, when things are going very well, and you're like just in the groove, what are you doing to get into a place like that and to stay in a place like that?
Yeah, great question. It's a lot about momentum. I think with the marketing, like you talked about, some of the partnerships that you have, really, um, you know, pouring into those relationships and partnerships that you have as much as possible to meet the customers where they're at. That's what's helped us retain momentum. It's also what has led us to stop having momentum. If you stop pouring into customers and having the finger on the pulse of what's happening with the business and your workers out in the field, that's where things happen, mishaps happen, which granted, with clients and with any sort of buyer of a product or a service, mishaps will happen. I think people expect it. We all have to understand that, these things, just occur with things that we even use in our everyday lives. Um, but it always feels good when that business or whoever has a finger on the pulse of what's happening and reaches out and says, "Hey, something was wrong, something, messed up, and how can we fix it?" So
Hmm.
I would say what generally contributes to us, keeping momentum or not having it is how how active are we with our clients, keeping them happy, meeting them where they're at, seeing what issues there are, actively solving them, making the clients feel good, not just using them for money, just but making them truly like partners in this with us as well.
Being proactive, yeah, absolutely. And on the other note, the other side of the coin, the dark side of the coin, when things are not going well, when everything's against you, you feel like you're I can't remember what, I don't know if it's a philosopher or a Greek, I don't know, Greeks symbolize God or something. I think it's Epictetus. He's like pushing up that could be way off, but it's like that one analogy of like that
Oh, The
guy
Rock.
pushing the rock up the mountain, right? And it's just like constantly coming. So when you get into a moment like that where things are all coming against you, what are you doing to get out of that or get through that period? Because you know it's going to come.
Not sitting idly by, just kind of riding it out. I think activity is the most important. Some people when they're nervous, they walk around, they twiddle their thumbs, like it's a natural response to trying to get out of a bad situation or to feel better during a bad situation. Activity is super important. So not feeling bad for yourself, not feeling bad for your company, it's not going to do you any good. I love this picture of a bison or a buffalo that I guess what they do is when a winter storm comes to them, they don't stand there. They actually walk into the storm, which seems counterintuitive because either you run away from the storm or hunker down and you just sit there and take on the storm. They actually the scientists have found out that they walk into the storm because they know it's the quicker way through it. Because if the storm's coming like this and you're just sitting here, well, it's gonna be there for some time. Heck, if it's chasing you, it's gonna be there for a longer period. But if you're simultaneously going through it, you're going to get through it quicker. And so they found that the bison get through the storm quicker by heading it on. So I think that's a great principle for me to have in my daily life, especially with the business. If there is issues, you have to face them head on. Just like I talked about eating the frog, do it first thing in the morning. Like you need to do it. Just face it head on, get through the problem, because it's going to be there and things happen. It's not the end of the world. Keep pushing, keep walking through the storm, and that's how you're going to get through it quicker.
Adam, if you were to go back to day one entrepreneur and give yourself advice when you are green, you're just starting out, you're just doing those first few jobs, what advice would you give yourself?
Um, you know, like I said, activity is king. Getting the product to market fast is king. Not worrying about what other people are necessarily even thinking of you. Like I had a lot of doubts about myself because of where, other people at law school were, how they were thinking of me and, just, why are you focusing on this? Like you need to be doing school, like more so school and less so business and those types of things. If you believe in yourself and if you have a good work ethic, keep pushing. And, again, those storms are going to come, but if I could tell myself to walk more quickly through those storms and to push forward, and not push them off, it would have helped solve many more problems much more quickly.
Wow.
So yeah, just keep pushing, and that's the quickest way to finding more success rather than failure.
So we're going to finish the episode as we finish every episode here on Built from Scratch with the quote, the words you've heard. In this case, it's a Bible verse that means the most to you. And so, Adam, I'm going to read that to you, and I'd love for you to share what this means to you and how this next generation of leaders can use this Bible verse as an encouragement to make massive change in the world we live in today. So the quote goes, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all understanding." Proverbs 9:10. Go for it.
Yeah, my like we've talked about, Eric, and we have a shared faith, Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. I spent a lot of time in prayer and reading my Bible and just really learning about the things that are hard to understand in this world. I think we have to humble ourselves to understand we're not the biggest part of our own universe. There's things above us, and there is a thing above us, which is God. And he takes away, he creates, and has the power to help us too through all things. And so the more that I have reverence for, another word for fear, of the Lord, of God, the more I'm able to really get understanding, get knowledge around, things of the world. Like I'm not, and I think a big part of that verse is about just humbling yourself, in the sense that you're not the center of the universe. You don't know all things, and you do need to always be seeking knowledge and seeking wisdom and understanding from other places that can give it to you. And so, God really has directed me to, use these experiences with business and people and relationships and whatever it may be to gain more knowledge and wisdom for going forward. And that's so important because I think a lot of people, go through bad things, they go through good things, but they may not really learn from them, at the end of the day, and they may keep repeating the same mistakes, go into the same issues over and over again. And so what I pray for is that the reverence of God that I have would allow me to humble myself each day and understand that I am not the center of my universe. I am not all that. I need help. I need a God who can truly help me gain understanding. And I need the people around me, to help me as well. So I think that's again why it's so important to have community and connections, and it is just so powerful. And that verse has really stuck out to me even this past year as I've gone through a lot of turmoil personally and with my business. First and foremost, acknowledging that, like I said, God takes and He creates and He gives away. And humbling myself before Him every day has been something that's led me to have greater humility and then therefore success because I'm able to see things in a much different light. So it's really, really a verse that means a lot to me.
Wow. That's awesome. A great way to finish the episode here. So as we're wrapped up here, just want to see, Adam, where can the audience, the guests here, where can they get in touch with you if they want to connect after some of those powerful words?
Yeah, super appreciate it. And again, Eric, thank you for having me. This is a fantastic show, and I'm so excited for connecting with anybody who would like to learn more. Yeah, maybe the best way to reach out to me is my business email, adam@stunio.com, or if you reach out to Eric, I bet we could get connected as well. But yeah, happy to offer any sort of resources on just like Eric would on how to start a business, how to run a business, how to do fundraising for a business, how to make that first step. I always say it's about the first step. Just don't worry about that perfect product. Take a first step. Happy to help anybody take that first step.
Huge. Adam, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Eric. Talk soon.